Hello and welcome to ET Auto. India has been and continues to be a globally preferred destination as a cost-competitive manufacturing base across industry sectors. India's competence as a software engineering hub is also globally acclaimed. Both bode well for the automotive industry, more often now referred to as the mobility industry, which is becoming increasingly software-defined. In terms of hardware engineering too, India has earned a recognition for herself as a strong, frugal engineering base. With the automotive or mobility industry becoming increasingly software-driven, there's a bigger opportunity for India's engineering and R&D industry to script a bigger story in the global stage. The need to create an innovation supercluster is even bigger for India now than ever before. In order to accelerate the pace of ER&D and enable the country to be a global powerhouse of ER&D in the automotive industry too. There are opportunities to be tapped, but some hurdles too on the way. To discuss the new trends, the challenges, and what is India's potential in the global ER&D industry in an increasingly software-defined automotive industry, we have with us a panel of industry leaders, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce the panel, starting with Sriram Lakshminarayan, President and Chief Technology Officer at Tata Technologies, Devashish Neogi, Managing Director, Renault Nissan Technology and Business Center, India, R.V. Narasimham, Senior VP and Global Head, Integrated Engineering Solutions at Tech Mahindra, and last but not least, Shiva Polimetla, who is the Head of ER&D at NASSCOM. So welcome, gentlemen, to this discussion, which I'm sure will be very enriching and valuable for all who are watching this. Without further ado, I would like to request each one of you to very briefly share your initial remarks or thoughts on the theme of today's discussion, which is India's ER&D potential in an increasingly software-defined automotive or mobility industry. Starting with you, Shiva.
Yeah, thank you, Sumantra. So broadly, if you see the trends like the technology advancements in connectivity, autonomous electrification, and personalized mobility, which is spearheading the vehicle to a software-defined vehicle, and India is well positioned and offered unparalleled ability to scale the talent for the global enterprises. And today we have about roughly a million ER&D workforce, and this is expected to, the supply is expected to increase roughly 2 million by FY26. And India also known for its software DNA, and we have 4.7 million tech employees, out of which about 2.5 million employees who are holding the core skills in the software. As well, the country also have about 3.8 million digitally trained talent.
Right. So since since the industry is becoming increasingly software defined, so let me bring in the industry experts from the software side for next. Mr. Sriram Lakshminarayan from Tata Technologies. Sriram, your views, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Sumantra and the entire team and the eminent panels. It's such an honor to be part of this. Just 2-3 different perspectives. One, if you look at it, most of the OEMs started identifying themselves as their vision statement as we wanted to be the #1 mobility service provider, or we wanted to be, they wanted to identify themselves as a software houses, right? So that's point number one. That's a paradigm shift in itself, right? So what it means is, number two is because of this, the lines are getting blurred. We talked about industries getting blurred, wherein which, there's no longer like an auto industry, an aero industry, or an industrial heavy machinery. So the lines it's becoming an industry without borders. I see the same thing that is happening on the technology side of it. It is going to become like the industry is going to look at ER&D skills and digital skills and IT skills, the lines are going to get blurred. So it is going to be looked at pretty much the skills that is needed for the future. So when you talk about skills that are needed for the future and skills at scale, I don't think there is a better country than India that is positioned to do this. Excited to discuss more on this.
Right. Well said there. And also, as you have rightly touched upon about how many companies, OEMs, are kind of looking at themselves as mobility solution providers. And likewise, the tier ones or component suppliers are kind of repositioning themselves as technology providers and co-creators of different solutions in this increasingly disruptive age. I mean, we have an example, let's say in Bosch, for example, what was RBEI or Robert Bosch Engineering India is now Bosch Global Software Technologies. So more or less same kind of animal, but a different name, which conveys which also reflects the changing kind of nature of the overall industry, as you pointed out. Next, let me bring in RV Narasimham, who is more commonly referred to, addressed as RV. So RV, over to you.
Hi, hello to all of you, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I think the topic is absolutely relevant, like Sumantra said, both from a perspective of India's contribution of becoming an ER&D hub, right? And in terms of what's happening the world over from a mobility standpoint, I think the paradigm of CASE, right? Connected, autonomous, shared, and electrification. I think these are the four key trends that all of us are quite familiar with, which are driving the ER&D spend in the automotive industry, right? And I just quote a couple of numbers here, borrowing a page from Siva's trend of talking about numbers, right? The Zeno report talks about 150 billion ER&D spend in the automotive, growing to about 200 billion or so in the next 2 to 3 years, all the way through 2025. But if you look at the kind of distribution of that spend, I think it's very interesting. The digital engineering spend of that is growing at about, I think, 12-13% CAGR, whereas the traditional R&D spend, is actually growing at a much lower number. So this clearly shows, where the money is being invested. And obviously, I think that kind of substantiates the fact that, there's a lot of investment that's happening in software, electronics, much more than ever before, right? So I think by 2025, the expectation is that about 40% of the automobile cost is actually going to be software. So like everything else in the world, right, it's going to be a software-driven vehicle. And I think, it's a great topic to discuss today. Okay,
great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those nuggets. Very interesting to note that the share of software is an investment on software development, developing software technologies is on the rise. And as mentioned, it could reach a level of 40% in the not so distant future. Let me bring in Devashish now. I mean, he's an interesting role. He kind of, he and his team marries both the software and the hardware, and created in recent times created some interesting products, the pictures of which can be seen behind, who have been and both these products have been instrumental to kind of change the fortunes of their respective makers in a very interesting yet very competitive market like India, especially for Nissan. So Devashish, your thoughts?
First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me in this very illustrious forum, and thanks to NASSCOM for making it happen. I think the subject of today is very relevant for mobility industry. As we said, as my colleague said, CAAC is a very major transformation which is happening in automotive industry, connectivity, autonomous, shared services, and electrification. But at the same time, I would say that no longer automotive companies are looked upon as to make products or sell services or service the cars. They are looking at services as another revenue stream, the services around the car. And when we say technologies like CASE, but also services both onboard and offboard, software plays a major role. So software will really play a big role in product development, but also services around the car. And what I understand from industry experts is that 30% of the revenue of a car company will come from services. So that's a big ask. And also, if I add on India as a destination for ER&D, I would say 3 points. First point is about the market itself, as India is gearing up to be the top 3 automakers, car automakers by 2026, after China and US. The second point I would like to say is the mindset of the Indian people in terms of being very competitive, frugal in mindset. And I think as in a very competitive world, this mindset is very important. So we as Indian engineers bring this on the table. And the third thing is the digital market in itself, because we being the biggest mobile users in the world, top 2 mobile users in the world, or top 2 internet connectivity. I think the ecosystem is there around us. The market is around us. The ecosystem is there. The talent is there. And I think today's subject really is very relevant for placing India as an ER&D hub.
Great. Well said there, Debashish. And now coming to you, Sriram, even as among the megatrends that are there in the automotive space, key among them is the electrification megatrend, which is also largely responsible for the sudden kind of growth in the software content in vehicles. Yeah. So tell us, this electrification megatrend, how much of an influence would it further make in terms of the integration of software technologies and thereby making the automobile as we have known so far to be more software kind of defined? Could you throw some kind of anecdotes basis your kind of projects that you're handling and the interaction with the various OEMs across the globe?
No, absolutely. I think first of all, the short answer is massive. The impact that it is going to create is going to be massive. Because see, both of the colleagues in the panel talked about case, right? But if you go and ask an auto OEM in terms of why are you doing this, why is case important, they will say only 3 things. One is to say that new lines of revenue, which Debashish touched upon it, right? I mean, 30%, 40% of new lines of revenue that people are looking at it. Number 2 is enhancing customer experience. Number 3 is reducing operating cost. Now, for all of these, if you put together where you have these new age OEMs, which are starting electric, and then you have these legacy OEMs, which are moving from ICE to EV. All of them face the same challenge, in terms of this whole ecosystem needs to change into, so you're going to talk about an electric powertrain. Then you're going to talk about the embedded software that are associated with it. How am I moving from a common way of creating, there is an app, there is a hardware, and then there is basic software, to there is a section of basic software, there is a section of hardware that becomes common to it, right? These challenges are there for everybody to grapple with. Now, from what we have seen, we've done full vehicle programs. See, that is one of our biggest value proposition at Tata Technologies. So when you talk of a full vehicle program, which is right from product definition to product launch.
And if I'm not wrong, a couple of them are born electric also, as in ground up electric, right?
Electric. Yeah, new age OEMs are looking at, and I'm sure Debashish should know this, because many of them, the people who are talking about bringing vehicle to the market, the timeline has shrunk so much. No longer we are talking of a full vehicle program of a 36 months, 48 months. People are saying 22 months. Can we bring a full vehicle program in 22 months, 20 months, and so on and so forth. Now, for that to happen, I think the fundamental DNA needs to change itself, right? Wherein which it is becoming more and more an ecosystem play. Non-traditional partners are coming into picture, which are traditionally, if you look at it, or all of them are software companies are doing some sort of a mobility services in their main agenda. Take, for example, Intel, NVIDIA, Qualcomm. All of them are there when it comes to mobility services, and the partnership of OEMs are happening with that. And tying back to it, the third leg that comes in is the service providers like ourselves, wherein which we bring in the offerings that are related to this space that needs to happen. wherein which you talk about just like how the open source has done for IT. I think AutoSAR had done for on the ER&D side of it. With
Yes.
AutoSAR coming in, everybody talk about basic software development, AutoSAR configuration, then talk about OTA, then talk about V2X. You cannot talk of vehicle to anything connectivity without tying it up with the digital side of it. So the biggest program that we have run, the full vehicle program, which is done across 7 countries, where India being the hub controlling most of it that is happening. You cannot think about software as an afterthought of a vehicle development. You needed to think at the beginning itself how your telematic solution is going to look like, how is the onboard applications need to look like, offboard applications that needs to come in. I think those are the massive learnings to it. So the way this is going to look at it is, you have this embedded software stack, and then you have these digital solutions stack. There will be a convergence of this. You cannot look at this in isolation. That's why in my opening remark, I said that the lines are getting more and more blurred. And that's our biggest learning. And that's how we have defined our world of offerings as well, actually.
So no, lines are getting blurred, even as software code lines are on the rise.
Or on the rise. Yeah.
Right. Are we, sticking to the topic of electrification, in your group company, Mahindra & Mahindra is now just kind of, if I may call it, it's a renewed kind of strategy for EVs. So on that, I'm sure Tech Mahindra must have also played a role.
Yeah, we do support them in terms of their ER&D and some of the initiatives, which probably won't be able to get into the details, but we are an ESP to the parent company as well, right? So we do a lot of that work. So you have a follow-on question, or?
Yeah, so I can understand while you may not be able to disclose the details, but in which areas are which are the areas where Tech Mahindra is kind of providing the services, the support.
Yeah, or maybe let me comment, dovetailing into what Sriram said, maybe talk a little bit about our global experience and what is being expected of us from both the global OEMs and tier ones. And as part of that, I can also probably touch upon, right, the kind of work that we do. So Sriram is right. I think, the lines are blurring, but I think, what we are seeing in the market today is also some level of demarcation between abstraction between hardware and software, right? So one of the things that we're seeing is a 3-tier architecture, right? We're talking about hardware being more and more standardized, and the OS being created. Some of them are developing proprietary operating systems, and some of them are looking up to open source to provide that, or a third party to be able to provide that platform. And we are seeing software playing a big role, like in the application services domain, right? It's being abstracted to a level where a lot of that can be reused across the platforms, across the products, right? So this is one of the key trends that we have seen as part of both the full vehicle programs that we're involved in, as well as some of the work that we do for both for OEMs and also for tier ones, right? So what this is calling for is, the creation of a sort of an end-to-end capability, right? So the way we focused on this is a chip to cloud kind of a paradigm, right? So we said, we will build within the integrated engineering solutions team the chip design capability. We acquired this company called Cirium 3 years ago, right? Who brought in the ASIC and the FPGA capability, right? We continue to build our embedded capabilities that Sriram referred to, right? And then also kind of bringing in the digital engineering capability into the traditional engineering space, right? So one of the things that we noticed, Sumantra, was the big challenge is, if you look at the lines of code that you referred to in an automobile, right, it has grown from few thousand or maybe few tens of thousand to a few million lines of code, right? But one of the interesting paradigms is, I think the productivity has not increased in line with that. Today, the biggest challenge that our customers are facing is in terms of the actual software productivity, which is in turn impacting their time to market for the products. So one of the biggest contributions.
How can that be addressed?
Sorry?
How can that be addressed?
Yeah, so that's exactly the role that Indian R&D can play is in terms of addressing that, right? One, it is a capability, right? The second is, driving extensive automation across the software product development lifecycle. India has always been or rather evolved into a software powerhouse. And on the applications domain, in the infra domain, we had a huge learning in terms of how to drive the productivity up, right, over the last, say, 2 decades or 3 decades or so. Now we need to bring in some of those best practices into software development, right, in the SDV context as well. It could be, agile at scale, or it could be the software engineering best practices that we have learned, right, in the other verticals. We're trying to bring that into play. Okay, that is number one. Number two, unlike in the apps and the infra space, right, here it's a physical product still, right? While a lot of that is getting abstracted, a lot of it is getting converted and being driven by software. One of the key learnings that we had was bringing the mechanical design and the software design together, right? In a sense that Sriram was also talking about that as part of the full vehicle development, in terms of bringing both the capabilities, competencies, and the people together and doing it under one umbrella, right? So that will actually increase, we found that will increase productivity quite a bit. This is in addition to a lot of automation tools and methodology that we have developed in-house as well. So we do leverage a lot of that. I mean, like I said, we do support M&M in their programs, whether it's passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, right? And we're also trying to support them on the EV program. Can't get into the details, but we are a very important partner for them in their journey.
And I'm sure, since you talked about digital engineering, Pininfarina, where Tech Mahindra picked up, well, you are also kind of supporting them significantly.
Absolutely. Pininfarina actually, helps a lot in terms of both, not just from a styling perspective, but also bring in the HMI, right? The human machine interface design experience and the UI UX design experience, which plays a very critical role to what Debashish alluded earlier in terms of the customer experience, right? Either in the infotainment systems or any aspect of the automobile. So they do bring in the styling and the design capabilities to the table. So it's not just chip to cloud, but also design to build, right? So that is the other paradigm to be looking at.
I would come back to you to understand more on that, because if you take Pininfarina is one of the iconic design houses, and which has from the purely design to how it is kind of transforming itself to be in tune with the changing times, which are going to change even further. So I would like to learn more about that later. And let me come to Debashish. ACEs or CASE, as the acronym goes by, not many people refer to as some say cases and case, some say ACEs, and some say PACEs, P for personalization. So tell us, what is happening on the personalization front in terms of the new trends, and how much of a support or how much of a kind of influence is software making in it, and especially when it comes to the Indian base. Let's say R&D BCI in your case, how is it supporting global programs?
So Mantra, you are basically asking about the personalization, if I understand well. Okay, and the role of software in it. Okay, so as I was mentioning that software is everywhere. It's not only case, but also the services around the car, and that's where I would say a lot of personalization comes into picture. Because when you talk of onboard application and offboard application, you have a host of activities which the customer really wants. Be it just a simple application offboard to locate the car, as simple as that, or it could be complex to start the car in remote, the air conditioner, so that when you enter the car, it is already warm or cold for hot countries and warm for cold countries. And also it can be as sophisticated as, let's say, monitoring the health of the car, and then some sort of alerts in terms of what could be the maintenance related actions which can be triggered through the software. So it is peace of mind for the customer also. Then personalization could happen around buying subscriptions for the car, like your favorite song or your favorite application. Then it could also integrate with the virtual personal assistant, like the Google or Alexa or something. So I think that's where, when I was mentioning in the beginning that it's not only case, but also the services around the car, which as a revenue stream could contribute as high as 30% to the P&L of the company. And why it is so exciting? Because it's really enhancing the customer experience and also giving a personal touch for the experience of the customer in the car. And what makes it possible is really all the software, which is basically doing not only a lot of data analytics, about the usage of the car, the customer trends, but also based on the data analytics, it can take some actions to give a wow effect to the customer. So really software is in the heart of the entire automotive industry, whether it is customer experience or just pure regulatory stuff that we have to do more and more electrification, as my colleagues RV and Shriram said, for a greener world. It will be autonomous driving, but also dictated by the safety regulations, which are getting more stricter and stricter, right? So you can imagine ADAS level 1 and 2 to get into the cars more and more, just because it has to be safe and secure car. But then the C and the E part of case, which is S part of the case, which is shared services and connectivity. And connectivity brings a lot of services on the car.
Right.
So if you say, what is our role in India? I think thanks to the talent pool on software, we are working not only on the, let's say, onboard applications of the car, integrating with the E architecture and the software, but also an offboard part of the car, like how to monetize the data as a revenue stream, or the cloud architecture and how to make the car interact with the cloud. So there is a host of things which India as a destination can help the OEMs in this beautiful journey of software-defined automotive industry or mobility.
Correct. Now there becomes important the role of, let's say, policies or strategies to collectively kind of build or further strengthen in India's position in the global ER&D industry. So Shiva, I would like to come to you with the automotive or mobility industry becoming increasingly technology intensive and innovation becoming almost the name of the game. There is a need to create an innovation supercluster, right? So tell us from a, let's say, from a government perspective and from policies perspective, what needs to be done or what should be done to kind of really kind of propel India further and really leverage the opportunities that are available now in this very disruptive era, some of them because of the megatrends as being discussed here.
Yeah. So one important element is, I think even Sriram also brought it up, the lines are blurring across the industries, right? So that's one important element. The second important element is it is very important that you need to standardize the interfaces and also work on a collaborative mode on the new technologies or the new R&D. So one of the key element that we are working with the government is looking for a supercluster, innovation supercluster for mobility and a couple of other sectors. So this will help the industries to come together and solve the industry level challenges. That is one of very important at a shared investments, right? So that's more important. So that is one, and also a very important element is also how do you bring the cutting edge R&D infrastructure, because India holds a lot of infrastructure on the traditional side. But if you really look up the car to car communication or even on autonomous, right? So this is very important. So how do we build the best in class R&D, joint R&D infrastructure? That's the second element. The third is also looking up from all these initiatives, how you come up with a policy framework for the mobility in the future, because it is very difficult also for lawmakers across the globe, because the automotive ecosystem is widening. So if you need to set up any of the standards or policies on the technology front, so it's very important to harmonize the different sectors so that it will not be contradicting each other. So this is also will help. The super cluster also will help in terms of building certain standards that are required for India as well as the globe.
Right. So when can we expect some kind of notification or announcement regarding any policy framework towards with the end objective of building these innovation superclusters?
Yeah, so this is working already. We are working with both state and central government. And if you see last year, we launched the Karnataka ER&D policy. This covers some of the elements, right? So recently, even we are closely working with the TN government. Even recently, their industry secretary announced that they're coming up with a ER&D policy. So some of them is already done, and some of them is on the way. So that anyhow, it's happening, and it is going to happen in near future.
So I mean, pretty much like how of late in like EV policies, state governments will take the lead. You're saying that in terms of coming up with these policy frameworks.
Yeah. So if you see that even the R&D policies by states, which is Karnataka that is announced, this covers the core elements of one is the R&D fund, definitely. The second is establishing the R&D infrastructure lab. The third is also capability building. So the government is also setting up the labs with the colleges, the state government colleges, as well as offering some of the NASCOM curated industry aligned certification courses, and also promoting the applied research with academia, because this is also very important in terms of capability building. So this has multiple elements, part of the policy framework. So I think this definitely scale across the multiple states as well as the super cluster policy from the government of India.
Now you touched upon something, capability building, which is absolutely critical. I mean, given the average age of Indians, which is in a way globally leading when it comes to and therefore we talk about this demographic dividend. But at the same time, there are concerns about the level of competency, the average level of competency. So from that perspective, also, don't you think that there should be at the central level, there should be some kind of interventions, maybe in terms of policy also, which will ensure that there's a uniform kind of development across all states in the country?
Yeah, no, definitely. So right now, even on the NASCOM, beyond this, so we have the Future Skills platform, which is predominantly provide extra academic training, right? So this is about, we have about 1.5 job codes, and we curated the content, right? So this is accessible. The second is now the NASCOM is also launching the extra academic practical training, which is called as a boot camp program. So this is about, a 450 hours of learning for students, which is more practical oriented learning. Right. So this is going to scale up roughly at least by 2026. These two programs in embedded and software will scale up roughly about 300,000 engineers by end of 2026.
Oh, I see.
If I may, sorry, Sumantra, if I may add, I mean, Shiva and I have been talking on this. So you asked about that. I think government is very, very serious about it. You would have seen it on the public domain as well, that the Karnataka government signing up with Tata Technologies to upskill 150 ITIs. And then it extended into government of Punjab, government of Tamil Nadu, government of Bihar, all the state governments. In fact, the Karnataka government ITIs that are powered by Tata Technologies, that is up and running actually. In fact, every ITI student is given an IoT toolkit so they can understand all of these new age technologies, because skills at scale, there is a scarcity for it, right?
Yes.
I think they realize that. And secondly, we also realize, we have our own learning platform called as I Get It. And we are partnering with, NASCAM to say that how do we augment, because there's a win-win for everyone, actually. I think this is going to be the crux of how we define success, because the talent pool that is needed, I don't think collectively all put together, we may be able to meet that actually.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's what I was coming to. I mean, this is a question for I would pose to all all the Shriram, RB, and Devashish about talent availability. I mean, India has been a preferred base for kind of a growing base for engineering, global engineering centers. We have seen the large tier ones setting up bases here many years ago, but that pace of growth seems to be accelerating over the last couple of years and set to accelerate even more, leading to a kind of race for talent. In fact, I recall recently, I mean, I had a chat with the global CEO of a major tier one, he was saying that the competition, or in his words, the war will be over talent, not so much about the technology and products. So, Sriram, how is the industry kind of going to address that challenge, specifically talking about, let's say, a player like Tata Technologies? Also, while we are discussing this, could you also kind of share at what rate is your recruitment program growing?
Yeah, I think the exact numbers, Shiva is the best person to give about it. But from what all of us have seen it, I'm sure that Debashish, Narasimhan would agree as well, is particularly with the social unrest and the situation that is happening in Eastern Europe, because there used to be a parallel hub that was creating in Eastern Europe and India. With that is happening in the world, there is more shift east that is happening. That means it is even more becoming a bigger challenge. So that's the premise in which we are operating, number one. So number two is to meet that. I think the only way that we are going to get there is upskilling. And upskilling is not, an industry cannot wait to get someone into their organization, have them go for 3 to 6 months of training, become productive. So the graduate hires that we talk about it, be it from engineering colleges or the example that I said, ITIs, how do you target and have them some sort of a ready engineer? Because we have something like a ready engineer program, wherein which when they come on board itself, they are ready and productive in the first 1 month or something like that. So there's no one measure that is going to solve this problem, because people are going to have this challenge of talent war that is going to be there. But I think a cluster of measures are being looked at. One is, tying up with universities, getting these upskilling done with ITIs, and also cross-skilling of something that is happening, just like how IT went through it, right? I mean, people who started working on legacy mainframes, COBOL and Java and things like that, they all have been upskilled into full stack developers, all sorts of upskilling things that were associated. I see the same thing that is happening, because you got to have, and you can train people on embedded by giving them a kit, have them some in-house projects. There's a whole host of measures that needs to come in. But I think while the industry in for a great ride, some of us who are at the senior management level are in for some great headache as well, actually. Good headache.
Right. It's a good problem to have, but nonetheless, it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And the sooner it is addressed, the better, I'm sure, for all of you, and for the overall industry also. By the way, what's the team strength at Tata Technologies now in terms of the engineering team strength, and at what rate is it growing?
I think we've grown phenomenally. In fact, you would have seen the LinkedIn post. Many of us, maybe Shiva had seen it because his friend had posted it. Yesterday, we crossed 10,000. So we have grown, at least in the last fiscal, if you look at it, the last financial year for us, our delta growth itself is 2,000. Considering the significant attrition in the people that we have come in, the delta growth is closer to 2,000. So that's a significant growth that we are talking. And one of the paradigm shift that you touched upon, Sumantra, is been the mantra that we are carrying it, because our tagline is engineering a better world. Now the message is subtly coming it as digital engineering a better world. I think that's why, even our CEO Warren Harris, every time he talks about it, the emphasis of, need for talent, not only in India. I mean, because our workforce of 10,000, if you look at it, not all of them are in India. We are operating in 10 plus countries. Our India workforce, our philosophy is local for local. So in that sense, India is about closer to 65 to 70% of the workforce still. And that is the manner in which we will grow. But to your question, I think this outlook of 10,000, the next 10,000, how long will it happen? That is going to be faster than the first 10,000. That's the outlook that I'm sure all of us will agree to it, and from whatever number that they will have.
Are we? What is it in Tech Mahindra's case?
Yeah, so I think talent supply chain is the most complex challenge that each of us have to solve, and it's not very different for us. But in terms of from a chip to cloud, like I said, we're looking at it from a spectrum of capabilities and competencies perspective. So we do have a very good pool of close to, I think, somewhere between 14, 15,000 associates that we can tap into, right, to put together the solution engineering groups. across the spectrum of these capabilities, right? And it's growing at a very rapid pace. I talked about the digital engineering spend and the rate at which that it's growing. So year on year, I think we are adding a few thousand people, right? Across these competencies, and the only way we can do that is cross-selling, cross-skilling, and upskilling that Sriram already talked about. But we also are looking, at the train and deploy models. We started a school called IATI, which is the School of Excellence exclusively for developing skills around the future of mobility, right? So we are doing that. We're also working very closely with Shiva and his team in terms of leveraging some of the programs that NASSCOM is doing. They've launched this embedded skilling program and very keen to leveraging that very soon. So, I mean, right from chip design to embedded to software to, cloud native development capabilities. I mean, you can just imagine, right? We'll require the full stack capabilities across the board. And the only way we can do that is to tap into the ecosystem, to run our own train and deploy program, right? To create more and more, mentor-mentee kind of models, right? If you will, so that we can rapidly grow the teams, right, in terms of their ability to participate in complex programs, in terms of a software-defined vehicle. It's a journey, I think, and also the rate at which the technology is coming in and the change is coming in, I think it's like never before, right?
Right.
So that's another big challenge. I mean, it's not a 5 or a 10-year window to build this, but it's like about like a 12 to 18-month window, to actually launch products and to be able to kind of deliver those services. So yeah, I think the initiatives are in place, but I think it's work in progress and it's a journey. It's a very good journey ahead. Yeah.
Very briefly, you talked about the training and deploying initiative that Tech Mahindra started. There within that, what are the 2 or 3 key focus areas that you want to you are kind of focusing on in order to kind of meet the end objectives?
No, the skills that are very relevant for the topic we're discussing today, which is the software-defined vehicle and the whole like AutoSAR kind of skills, which are the standard software development skills. It could be embedded, right? And then a lot of training around functional safety, a lot of training around validation, right? Validation is a good 35% of the business, right? As we get into the full vehicle programs, there's a lot of software testing that can happen out of India. So these are some of 3 or 4 areas, both functional and technical, where we are rapidly building the skill sets.
I see.
Just Samantra, add to RV. If you see that today, the overall ER&D talent stands at roughly about 1 million people. And this is the third largest R&D destination in terms of the headcount, especially. So that's one part. The second element, if you see that the demand is going to rise by another 1 million in next 5 years, right? So, but in India. So if you see that today the supply is about 600,000 and around another 500,000 talent to be aligned to the industry needs. I think that is what, as we are working with the companies, NASSCOM and industry. But if you see the demand, the 70% of the demand is coming from the 3 areas. One is definitely embedded, 2 is full stack. The third is digital integration, including the digital engineering. When I say predominantly the big data analytics, artificial intelligence, this is the majority in the digital integration and engineering side.
And in terms of the demand that's coming up that you mentioned, what would be the share of the automotive stroke mobility industry?
So I would say the automotive, the currently out of this 36 billion Indian R&D market, it is about 20, but it is going to grow significantly compared to the other verticals, especially the software R&D and automotive is going to grow very faster. So this will at least reach the automotive share by next 5 years would reach to 30%.
And currently, which are the leading drivers in terms of sectors?
The sectors is the product engineering and software. Software R&D and automotive will contribute 50% of the share.
Okay, great. And overall, the ER&D industry, if I'm not wrong, is expected to touch somewhere around $63 billion by FY25.
Yeah, FY25. So it may touch between, with its normal growth, it is naturally reaches to 63 billion. But with considering the lot of transformation and structural changes in the industry and also the technology, it is expected to reach 75 billion by FY26.
Devashish, in one of your earlier remarks, you touched upon autonomous driving, and that is also becoming, making inroads into India. I'm talking about the volume segment. It's been there to say now, for example, now L1.5. If you look at, let's say, something a model like the XCV700 launched last year, it was the first in, followed by later by, say, another OE like MG Aster offering L2. And it's basically what I'm saying is that ADAS technology is being also leveraged as a differentiator for brands in this very competitive Indian market. How do you see this progressing? And also, as I understand, India, some of the India tech centers are also global COE for autonomous driving, for higher levels of autonomous driving, but for application overseas. In India, how do you see it going? And R&D BCI, what kind of work are you doing on the autonomous side?
So good question, Sumantra. This is also there in many curious auto enthusiasts. Where is our future of automotive industry going? So I would say that clearly we see a distinct trend in which some of the ADAS features are coming in the car, as the examples you mentioned. But I would say that one of the key drivers to bring more autonomous features in the car is regulation. And we have seen this trend in Europe with the new GSR norms, which brings more and more autonomous driving features on the car. India sort of follows Europe. So around anything coming in Europe regulations, more or less in 2 to 4 years, it comes to India. So I would see that really big traction in terms of more and more autonomous features coming, basically to fulfill the regulatory framework. As we speak, we are talking of Bharat NCAP, right? And then you will have the star rating, 3 to 5 star, and then some of these features will have to be anyway incorporated in the car.
Something like, let's say, autonomous emergency braking, for example, let's say.
Exactly. And if you talk about capabilities in India, I would say, as my colleague RV and Shriram mentioned, a big portion of validation, software validation, I think India is a key destination. And also not only the right side of the V cycle, as we say, the validation part, but also on the conception side, more and more India is looked upon as a destination in terms of AutoSAR migration, and also doing some software in the loop, model in the loop test. So I would say that the Indian engineers are basically looked upon into the entire V cycle process. I would say end to end. No longer we are just concentrated only on the validation side. So this is a very big trend which is happening. And really this gives the Indian engineers the full scope of software development sphere. I think that's where the talent crunch is coming, because we are sort of moving up the value chain, no longer cost arbitrage. It's more like a value creator. We are looked upon as value creators. And then with the frugality and the competitive mindset, we bring a lot of competitive mindset. So our Indian engineers not only deliver the solution, but with a very competitive mindset. And that's where the two cars at the back is really putting good affordable features, but at very competitive cost. So I think we have a lot of things in our DNA, the software, the digital skills, but also the mindset of being very frugal and cost competitive, which attracts all the OEMs to set up big centers in India. But also my colleagues who are in consulting, Tata Technologies, Tech Mahindra, getting more and more offers. As I'm speaking, we are 8,000 strong people in R&D PCI, and we will cross 10,000 in another 2 years.
Okay, that's good to know. So are we, earlier we talked briefly on Pininfarina, how it's transforming itself to be in tune with the changing times, leveraging digital engineering. So now what level of at what rate is the transformation happening, and how is the digital technologies playing a role there?
Yeah, I think the starting point for this is the intelligent cockpit solutions, right? So as the demand for connectivity, right? It actually will require a lot of intelligent cockpit solutions, and that's where they do have a very clear offer there. Whether it's establishing high-speed channels, right, between different smart devices to connect diverse lifestyle scenarios, right, at different places. It could be work, it could be travel, it could be day-to-day activities, and then it's also trigger a demand for gradual expansion of the user's shared ecosystem, right, across the intelligent cockpit experience. So I think that's where the HMI skills, the design capabilities, the human-machine interface kind of design capabilities are being leveraged. And this goes beyond what the OEMs have today, right, as in-house capabilities. So I think that's where Pininfarina is being extensively leveraged. And this also means that it's obviously totally software driven. It is leveraging new technologies like AR, VR, and AI, ML. Yeah, so that's the starting point. But I think they can get more and more involved in the design of every aspect of a software-defined vehicle, right, as we go forward. But it's all started with a very pointed offer and a solution around the design of the HMI for an intelligent cockpit solution.
Right. And there we are. On that note, we have reached the end of this very interesting and insightful discussions, and exciting times ahead indeed for the automotive industry, and therefore for the India also as an engineering and R&D hub. Last words from each one of you gentlemen in not more than 20 seconds each, starting with Sriram. In the next few, say 3 to 5 year horizon, what are the key things that you're looking out for?
Can't be said in 20 seconds, but I'll try. I think number one is domain knowledge. This industry, while it is becoming software, it is extremely important. You need to have domain knowledge. Bring in that domain expertise. That's going to be number one. Second, it's an ecosystem play. You need to have varied partners that are there in this, particularly when you go into software-defined vehicles. It includes traditional partners. It includes, somebody who is completely irrelevant to this industry as of today could come in as well. Three is other industries coming into play as well. So the EV, particularly if you look at it for us, Tata Power, Tata Communications, all of our own ecosystem, parent company.
Tata Universe strategy that you've kind of plotted.
Correct. So those are the three things in the 25 seconds, but I can go on and on. So.
Coming to RV, in terms of how can India further strengthen itself as a base? It has proven low cost is not what many people would like it to be called, but cost competitive manufacturing base, frugal engineering. But how can it be now really position itself as a destination of choice when it comes to mobility, automotive ER&D?
Yeah, no, I think we need to meet the key expectation, right? India as a hub has to deliver on the talent equation. That's very, very important because the expectations are very high. I think the technology has evolved quite rapidly. So we need to bring the talent to the table who can move up the value chain, like Debashish said, and do the end-to-end, right, from development all the way through validation. So that is number one. And so the whole part of it we discussed earlier in terms of how we would build the talent and how we'll bring that. The second aspect of it is productivity, very, very important. I think India has a phenomenal opportunity to bridge that software productivity gap for a software-defined vehicle, right? While there's so much technology available, I think the rate at which we're going to deploy the technology, develop the technology, release that software, do the OTA and all that, right? It requires that the productivity has to be increased. A lot of it through automation, a lot of it through the technique that I talked about, bringing in the traditional mechanical and the digital engineering capabilities together, right? And creating that magic. So I think that's a very, very important aspect. And and last but not the least, frugal engineering. I mean, in some areas, in some pockets, whether localizing some products, or it could be a product which is built out of India but then deployed in the other, take it to the other regions. So we have done an end-to-end vehicle program for one of the OEMs. One such program where it was built in India but then taken to the global market. So I think that trend also will continue to be. So we should be fine-tuning and honing our skills in terms of value analysis, value engineering, product cost management, right? Our ability to handle the global sourcing supply chain as it gets disrupted, right? And bring that value in terms of a building cost-effective products. So I would say these are the three key things, three big challenges. And if you're able to solve this, I think we'll truly become an innovation hub and an innovation cluster, like the word that Siva uses, right, from NASSCOM. So.
Right, the OEM perspective there, Debashish, in terms of going forward, how critical would the India's tech center be for the alliance?
So I would say that
and also while at it, could you also share it has the kind of disruption that's happening, the unrest that's happening in one part of Europe, also kind of leading to any kind of influence in the job that your engineers are doing here?
Exactly. So I will say that for India to emerge as a ER&D hub, potential ER&D hub, or the leader of the pack is, I will say, QCT and T. So quality, very important to deliver the right quality. If you talk of software, how to give a software solution with the least of the bugs. What the customer hate is to see the bug in the car. So I think the shift left policy to detect bugs earlier at the digital phase rather than catching it at the customer car. So quality consciousness is topmost. Second is cost competitiveness, but we have it. We just have to recreate this magic in this transforming world. And delivery, faster time to market. So we have all the digital tools, automation, AI, ML, RPAs to do that. And last but not the least are the resources. And I think one of the things we have to catch up is to have talent from the educational institute who are industry ready. We have a long way to go in this direction. And I think we as industry, collaboration with the universities to have tailor-made programs and modules in their curriculum so that when they come to the industry, they ramp up fast in skills and ready to contribute. So these are my takeaways to position us as a leading ER&D hub.
Right.
And as far as you are talking about the shift of work, definitely I fully agree with Shriram. India is looked upon as an extension of the corporate vehicle development team. We are no longer an offshore center. We are part of one single team with the overlap of time. We are one team doing the full car development together. This is how it is being looked more and more.
Right. Shiva, as an industry body, I think there's a lot of expectation, a lot of responsibility for NASSCOM on multiple accounts. One is also to kind of ensure that India kind of gets to the potential or lives up to its potential, while at the same time addressing the challenges, including as almost all the panelists, your co-panelists mentioned about skill development and talent availability.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. One is the biggest challenge is the talent, because the demand is going to rise significantly, at least year on year, at least 15 to 20% in the ER&D space. So we have taken up the initiatives and along with the industry. This is more as industry joint assessment and certification. So curated by industry and facilitated by NASSCOM. And these training programs are aligned to NSQF levels, especially. The talent is one. Second is also, how do we enable the overall ER&D ecosystem, to deliver competitive advantage as well as, a tangible business value to the global enterprises from India. So I think around this, we are significantly working on these two elements.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shiva. On that note, it brings us to the end of this very interesting special discussion. And what a time to have this around India's 75th Independence Day. So as all of you pointed out, India is poised to reach greater heights, but at the same time has its own handful of challenges also to be addressed, which I'm sure with a very collaborative approach, collaborative in kind of activities, these will be hopefully will be addressed, and with some due support also from the governments. So on that note, thank you very much, gentlemen. It was indeed a very interesting and engaging and fruitful discussion. Wishing you and your organizations all the very best, and thank you for your participation, and to all the attendees, to all the viewers of this panel discussion. So wishing you also all the very best. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.